most of you, or many of you, are familiar with Tibetan practice. Some of you aren't, but we do a lot of visualization. So when we chant, we're not just saying things to empty space, but we're imagining in the space in front of us all the Buddhas surrounded by all the Bodhisattvas. And then when we say refuge, you know, we're saying that to them. We say, I take refuge. We're visualizing them in the space in front. We're not taking refuge in empty space. Yeah. And similarly, when we do the chanting, we imagine that all sentient beings are around us and we're leading them in taking refuge. And we're also leading them in generating bodhicitta, the aspiration to attain full awakening in order to benefit other sentient beings most effectively. So, you know, the chanting we do involves this creating a whole scene, and we're actually very good at imagining. Some people come to Tibetan practice and they say, oh, you guys are just visualizing this and visualizing that. It's such a distraction. You have to concentrate your mind. But if you look in our daily life, we're constantly visualizing. Yeah? Okay? Like the session right before lunch, you're probably visualizing lunch, or at least the lunch you would like to have, not necessarily the one that's being served. When you're mad at somebody, boy, you have a very good visualization of them. Yeah. And how you're going to go there and just go, meh, very clear in your mind. So what this way of visualizing is doing is it's taking something that we do normally in our lives, but converting it into something virtuous. So instead of, visualizing Beyonce and Snoop Dogg, yeah, Snoop Dogg. Yeah, he's carrying the torch the last part of the way in the Olympics. So I finally found out who Snoop Dogg was. I was kind of waiting to hear somebody bark, but yeah, but so we visualize all of that stuff. So instead of doing that, we're thinking of something, a visualization with the holy beings and then with all other sentient beings. And we might say, well, why am I visualizing all other sentient beings? It's like I have no idea who they are. They're off in some universe somewhere, 3 countless great eons of light, the speed of light away. Okay? So, why am I thinking about them? Well, because when we generate bodhicitta, our aspiration is to attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so all means all, yeah, which means that there's a challenge to really generate love and compassion for all these beings and to care about them and to want them to attain awakening. Yeah, and they are actually all around us. Yeah, in the sense that no matter how many universes away they may be, or how many inches away they may be, we live influenced by all these other living beings. Yeah, there's nowhere on this planet where we can go where we are not surrounded by other living beings. Yeah. I used to say you could, even Mount Everest, but now that's a big tourist attraction and it's quite crowded, so you're not going to be free of all sentient beings on top of Mount Everest anymore. Yeah. But, to really see that we are not independent people who can exist by ourselves. Yeah, that we depend on others. Those four requisites: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. We depend on others for those. Yeah, our Buddhahood is dependent on others because they're the object of our bodhicitta. And if we leave even one of them out, you may have an enemy who you have vowed to never speak to again, and you pray for them to get hit by a truck, or whatever it is. Yeah, you leave that person out, you're canceling your own possibility for awakening. Just one sentient being we leave out. Yeah. So this is a challenge to us, um, to recognize all of our preconceptions and judgments about others and be able to put them down, because those things, aside from usually not having anything to do with the object we're imputing them on, yeah, these faults, this mind that's always criticizing is harming us. It's not harming anybody else. Okay, so when we're, imagining leading all sentient beings and creating bodhicitta, we are imagining doing something good for them, which also benefits us. Okay, so this is something that's quite important in the Buddhist practice, and you'll hear it over and over and over again, and it's challenging. Yeah, I remember hearing my own teacher, stress this so much. And then after that, I happened to be in Manali, in India, and I was taking a walk in some fields, and I sat down in a field, and there were grasshoppers around me. Yeah, and I was thinking, my awakening depends on that grasshopper. And that grasshopper and that grasshopper. And it was, in one way, it was strange, but in another way, well, yeah, that grasshopper is a sentient being. Yeah. And that consciousness born in that body hasn't always been born in that body. Yeah. Right now, it's born as a grasshopper. It can't communicate. It's life is so narrow. But that in a previous life, that grasshopper, the mind stream of that grasshopper, was in a body that was, my closest friend or my parent or whoever. Yeah. So when you habituate your mind with thinking in this way, then it changes how you see people and grasshoppers and all the other living beings. Yeah, my cabin is it's a gathering place for bugs. Human beings go to discos and bars, and and bugs come to my cabin. Um, you know, and they hang out. And so I try and be careful with them. But what I've noticed is there's this year, not so much in previous years, but this year, some of those bugs are so tiny that I think they're just specks of dust. Yeah. And so I have to be very careful not to just stick my finger on them and then flick them off, thinking that they're a little bit of dust, because I have to look very carefully, and you see these teeny legs, maybe, or just it's so small and it just barely wiggles, and you think, what would it be like to be born in a body like that? how limited your mind is and how at risk you are, you know, because anybody could just, something that small, yeah, you just go like this, thinking you're cleaning the table, and it's bugs that get killed. So, cultivating this kind of awareness influences how we live with bugs, but also, it influences our spiritual practice. Okay, so when we're doing the prayers, we have this visualization and this way of thinking. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a minute. Yeah, visualize the Buddha, and you don't have to see every single Buddha and Bodhisattva around. Don't, where's that one? Just feel like you're in the presence of all these holy beings who have done what you aspire to do. And when you imagine the holy beings, their bodies are always made of light. And then let's recall our bodhicitta motivation. So think about what was said at the beginning of this session, and from that, generate bodhicitta. So traditionally, the first day of EML, I talk about the Buddha's life, because not only was Shakyamuni Buddha the founder of this particular dispensation in our world, but also he is what we aspire to be. And he is the one who started the monastic lineages. Yeah. So it's only right that we kind of start with his life, because his life was an example of the teachings. Yeah. So I don't want to do this as some old biography, kind of yawn, but just how his life exemplifies the Dharma and the challenges that he went through, uh, not only in his spiritual practice, but to become a monk, uh, you know, and what happened after that. It's really something. So the story of his life, I imagine, has been um, enhanced a little bit. You know, uh, usually on Vesak Day, the anniversary in the Tibetan tradition of his birth, awakening, and then passing away, parinirvana. Um, it's said that that first of all, the Buddha was born from his mother's side, that he stood up and said, "This is my last life," and walked 7 steps. So, quite precocious for a baby. um, yeah. So those kinds of things, you know, um, yeah, whether they're true or not, they can be inspiring. So, you can choose your own way of relating to them. Um, but don't criticize other people who take those things literally if you happen not to. Okay, because it can be, quite meaningful for other people. Okay, so, um, and I'll try and compare some of the things in his life to our life. Yeah. Uh, so he was born, and his father was sometimes they say he was a king, but he wasn't really a king. He was kind of the leader of that republic. But he was, an important person in the community and kind of helped to govern. Uh, and so, as was the tradition, they called a soothsayer who, to tell the young child's fortune. And they told his parents that he will either follow in his father's footsteps and become a great ruler, or he will become a great spiritual leader. Okay, so what do you think his father chose? Yeah, if that happened in your family when you were born and your parents were told that you would have become a famous movie star or run for president, or either that or you would be a monastic, what would your parents have chosen? Okay, so you got the scene, and the amount of pressure that he was under growing up, with his father wanting to make sure that, he was deeply implanted in the family occupation. He was going to carry on the tradition. He wasn't going to get distracted. Okay, so if you think you had pressure to score good grades, maybe the Buddha didn't go to college or didn't finish high school, but there was a lot of pressure on him. Okay, so uh, and that's shown as when he was grown up. As he was growing up, um, they say he excelled in all the sports. He excelled in all the knowledges, that were prominent at that time. So, uh, you know, to and of course, because he was the child of the ruler, he had his choice of wives. They all came parading before him. He got to, choose the one he wants, so he didn't have to go on a dating app or anything like that, you know, and got married, and so far, good. Yeah. There was one incident when he was young. He had a cousin named Devadatta, which comes up. This cousin comes up during his life story a few times. So uh, there was they were about the same age, I think. And one day there was a swan that was flying, and Devadatta shot it with an arrow, not with an AK-15, just with an arrow. Yeah. And the swan fell, and, it was injured, but still alive. And the Buddha, as a bodhisattva, Siddhartha went and scooped the swan up and, uh, healed it, tended to its wounds. And Devadatta said, "This is my swan. I shot him, give him to me." And the Buddha said, "No, I was the one who picked him up and took care of him." So they had to take this to uh, you know, to the court. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And, fortunately, Thomas and Alioto were no longer on the Supreme Court. So the rest of the Supreme Court decided, the elders in the village, that the swan actually belonged to Siddhartha because he had saved the life, whereas Devadatta wanted to take the life of the swan. Okay. Yeah. And then there were also episodes as a child where he would sit under the tree and just go into deep states of concentration. Anyway, as he was growing up, he was the perfect child in his parents' eyes. Yeah. It's like, well, look, he's going to take over the dad's business, and he's even brighter, and they're going to make a ton of money, and he's going to be famous, and they're going to write about him in some magazine. Uh, and, so the parents were so proud of him. And especially he got married, he had a child, he had a boy. This is the, old fashioned not patriotic, you know, patriarchal society. Yeah. So everything's great. And then Siddhartha starts to wonder, because until then, he's just been living in his own gated community, with all these other relatives who were equally wealthy. And he never went downtown. He never went to the slums. He didn't see anything but all these people living in the lap of luxury. And he thought that's the way life was. Yeah. And some of us may have been raised in that kind of environment where our parents tried to protect us from seeing anything that, involved war or death or hostility or anything like that. Yeah, they may have tried to protect us, and we may have grown up in a very sheltered way, unexposed to people who were different than us. Yeah. Uh, there's so many different ways that people are different, but everybody now, the latest thing is everybody has to look like us. Yeah, isn't that, you don't want to go someplace where there's nobody who looks like you. So we may have grown up in a community where everybody looked like us. Maybe not exactly, but you know what I mean. Same race, same coloring, same religion. Yeah. So so that's the environment the Buddha grew up in. But as he got older, he got curious about, what was outside his gated community. Yeah. And so he did what some of us may have done in our teenage and young 20 years. You sneak out of the house, or you tell your parents you're going one place, but you go somewhere else. Anybody do that when they were young? Yeah. Or were you all just perfect little boys and girls? That you always told your parents whoever you were going out with, wherever you were going. Yeah. Yeah, you did? Oh, okay. You're unique. um, yeah. You didn't tell your parents about, the drugs you were taking or, any of this kind of stuff, who you were hanging out with. So, you know, you keep the good veneer and you sneak out, or you lie to your parents. So the Buddha snuck out at night, yeah, and he went with his charioteer, and he went into the town, and the first person he saw, or one of the people that he saw in the town, was an older person. Yeah. So somebody kind of walking with a cane or walking with a, what do you call them? Yeah, a walker. I don't think they had walkers then, but probably a cane, no electric wheelchairs. But, an old person who was, this is what happens. If you don't die earlier, you're going to get old. And this is the reality of it. But he had never seen an old person before. So he saw this old person, he was shocked. and he asked his charioteer, who is that? His charioteer said, it's an old person. What's an old person? And the charioteer had to explain. And then Siddhartha said, oh, how did he become old? Why did he become old? And the charioteer said, that's what happens to all of us. It's just the very natural flow of life. So that was rather shocking to the Buddha, because he was, with young, hip people. And then all of a sudden, here's somebody old who used to be young and hip. Okay, yeah. And all of a sudden, people are saying, okay, boomer. And, to this old man in the town. Okay, so that shocked him. When he went back to the palace, he was really thinking about that. Yeah. The second time he snuck out, again with his charioteer, again going into the village, he saw a sick person. Yeah, in India, uh, you know, sickness is just there. Yeah. I mean, it's everywhere, but we hide it away. You have hospitals, you have old folks' homes, so you don't have to see all the aging people. You have hospitals, you don't have to see all the people who are sick and dying. You hear stories about them, but everybody is getting treated, which is good. But the people who, you know, are not exposed to that don't know anything really about what it's like. Yeah, except some people don't want to go in the hospital because who wants to see sick people and be reminded that sickness is going to befall us as well. Nobody likes to think about that. Yeah, so we avoid it. And in India, India's changing now, but when I first went to India, sick people were there in the streets. They were there in the railway station. Yeah, dead people were there in the railway station. It's just, this is life, and it's right here, you know. So again, Siddhartha was very surprised, like, what's that? Because he had never been ill. He had never seen anybody who was sick. It was all hidden away from him. And so again, his charioteer had to explain, what sickness was. And he had to say, who does it happen to? Well, all of us. Yeah. And what happens after you're sick? Well, sometimes you get better and sometimes you don't. And again, this was like super shocking to him because he had never been ill or seen anybody who was really, really ill. So when he returned to the palace, he's still thinking about this. Yeah? Because he finds out that, he and everybody else he knows are going to get old, they're going to get sick. The next time he snuck out without his parents knowing where he was going, he saw a corpse. And this was not unusual. Like I said, when I first went to India in the railway station, there were bodies. And, in the streets, somebody would die. Mm-hmm. So, again, for Siddhartha, this was so shocking, And the charioteer had to explain, this is a dead person. What's dead? What's death? Yeah. And all the charioteer could say was, you just aren't there anymore, and the body decays and the consciousness, does something else. And so this really was a shocker to Siddhartha. Yeah. So it may remind us of this, the first time that maybe a grandparent or somebody died, and what that was like, how surprising that was. How many of you have seen dead bodies? Yeah, how many of you have not seen dead bodies? Yeah, well, the first time you see a dead body, depending, of course, what shape it's in, now they take you to the mortuary and, put on makeup and make you look really good. I had one of my high school friends, her mom had Hodgkin's leukemia and died from it. And I went to the funeral and I was hearing people say, "Oh, I haven't seen her look so good in a long time," after looking at her corpse because of the way she was made up. Yeah. So just how our society hides aging, sickness, and death, how it's very difficult for us to really understand it. So again, the Buddha returned to the palace and really thinking now, what's life all about? If you get old, you get sick, and you die. And in the end, you look like that corpse, the old, version of you who you thought was always young because you looked in the mirror when you were young, and that's your image of who you are. But now, you're a corpse. So again, it really made him think. Then the fourth time he went out, again, didn't tell his parents where he was going. They were in town and they saw a wandering mendicant. Yeah, in India, traditionally and to this day, they have wandering mendicants, people who are spiritual seekers, who, live very simply, sleep out in the woods or wherever, and go into town on Pindapat, on alms round, and they live on alms. They don't handle money. So, to this day, there's all these wandering mendicants. And, and they follow different teachers. So they have different kinds of practices, different appearances, and so on. But they all look like beggars. So, he went into town and then saw a wandering mendicant. And it's like, whoa, that person isn't dressed with all the finery that I'm used to seeing in the people around me. What's going on? And so his charioteer had to explain, that person is seeking a way out of birth, aging, sickness, and death. They want to end that cycle. And that was like a real shocking thing, oh, the possibility that there was an end to that cycle of samsara, the possibility that somebody would even devote their life to that. This thing was completely, not in his mind. Yeah, was it in your mind when you were a teenager or a young adult? No, I never expected to be a Buddhist nun. If you had told me, I would have told you you were out of your mind. Yeah, who would do something like that? I mean, samsara has so much pleasure. Why would you become a monastic? So, this was something quite puzzling to the Buddha. But he went back to the palace and he thought about it some more. And he decided, I need to find a way out of this cycle. Because if this is what is the situation for all of us, I want to find a way out. So again, he went out with his charioteer another time. He took off all of his finery, yeah, and put on rags, so he looked like all the other mendicants. He took off his jewelry, yeah. So the reason when we see the Buddha statues that his earlobes are quite long is because before, as a wealthy person in the government, he was wearing very heavy earrings that stretched his ears out. So when he took them out, there's these big holes in the ear. So, he took off his jewelry. He sent his charioteer back. Can you imagine arriving back at the palace and, your lord or your king or whatever he was, says, where's my son? And you say, well, he just ran away from home. Yeah, he went off and he didn't tell us where he was going. And he went by himself and he left all of his clothes and put on rags and he left his jewelry and he cut his hair. Yeah, and the king is like, my son, who was supposed to take over the kingdom, did that? I mean, total freak out. Yeah. So, yeah, what do his parents do? They call 911. Yeah. And they say, my kid is missing. Go find him. Yeah. So the FBI goes out together with, the local police, the state police, the, highway patrol. Everybody's going out looking for this runaway kid. Yeah. Can't find him. So he went off. Yeah. And he started living as a wandering mendicant. But he thought, I don't know how to get out of this samsara. I need a teacher. I need somebody who knows. So he found a teacher, and at that time, and still very much like it is today, developing concentration was, the main thing that these wandering mendicants emphasized. Because when you develop these deep states of concentration, your physical senses don't work. Yeah, so you're not bothered by, noise and, somebody else honking their horn, playing the music too loud, whatever, you know, and you're just in this very peaceful, blissful state in your own samadhi. And you can stay there as long as you want to. So he found a teacher, and this was the practice his teacher was teaching. So he did it, and he mastered it. I forget what state he got up to, some state in the dhyanas or jhanas. Yeah. And so he had perfect concentration. And he was such a good disciple that the master said, I will turn the whole thing over to you, and all my disciples will become your disciples. But he said, no. Yeah. He said, I still am not liberated. Yeah. So to notice that when you are in these deep states of samadhi is quite difficult, because they say that it's so blissful that, who wants to do anything else? But he left that teacher and he started wandering around again, looking for another teacher. And he found another teacher, and who was also teaching this practice of very deep states of concentration. So he started practicing with that teacher. He attained an even higher state of concentration than he did with the first teacher. The second teacher also offered to, give him all of his followers. And again, he declined because he said, I still am not liberated. Yeah, because he could tell that the root cause of samsara, the ignorance, anger, and attachment. Those are called the three poisons, the root being ignorance. He recognized those were still in his mind, at least in seed form. So again, he left that teacher. And then he met up with some other wandering mendicants, yeah, and they were doing ascetic practices, yeah. So they had the philosophy, and again, this is a philosophy that you find in some Indian practices today. You find it in the Catholic Church, you know, the practice of asceticism, where you deny the body, yeah. So I don't know how much they do it now in Catholicism, but I know when I was a kid, very often the monks and nuns, they had these, what's it called, the hair shirts, or some kind, yeah, there's a few ex-Catholics here. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it's some kind of, something made of some kind of very harsh hair, you know, and they would beat themselves with it, you know, in the Catholic monasteries or nunneries. And they would go in ice cold water, like off of the coast of Ireland, which was Catholic, you know, go in the water, the icy water. The idea being that, you know, they could tell, as, you know, anybody can tell, that we're very attached to our bodies. And we have a lot of attachment to our bodies and to experience pleasant sensual sensations from them, and that kind of attachment and craving for that was a huge distraction from your spiritual practice. So that's why people engage in asceticism, the idea being that if you deny the body of these things, eventually the body gets used to it and you stop craving these things, and then you're free of attachment from your body. Yeah. So, which enables you to go deeper in your meditation and attain even higher states of concentration. So he started practicing with these 5 other ascetics. And when you're outside of Bodh Gaya, you can go to the place where they practiced. And yeah, so they practiced one thing they did was they ate 1 grain of rice a day. So the Buddha practiced with these guys for 6 years, eating 1 grain of rice a day. Yeah. So he was thinner than, you know, Kim Kardashian. Um, you know, thinner than Twiggy, although some of you are too young to know who Twiggy was. Any of you know who Twiggy? Yeah, so thinner than Twiggy. Thinner than, you know, somebody was telling me recently that their father was in the army that liberated one of the concentration camps in Germany at the end of World War II. Yeah, if you've seen pictures of what some of the people in the concentration camps look like. So that's what the Buddha liked. I mean, 1 grain of rice a day, you know. So they say when he touched his belly button, he could feel his spine. So he practiced like this for 6 years with his friends, and then realized, you know, I still haven't cut attachment to the body. You know, I'm doing this practice, but it's not really getting me anywhere. So he left. Yeah. Meanwhile, his friends are saying, "What a cop out! You're a softy. You know, you can't handle the practice anymore. You're just running back to your family and its luxury." You know, making fun of him. They put it all over, you know, these taunts all over his Facebook page, and, you know, really humiliating. Buddha didn't care, you know. Siddhartha didn't care. He crossed a river, very symbolic. He crossed the river. He left that practice. He was going off again. And he sat under a tree to meditate. And, he had only had 1 grain of rice for the last 6 years. So he probably looked rather atrocious. If you think, what do you look like after that? Probably his hair all fell out, his skin was withered, not so good. And this young woman came up and thought that he didn't recognize him as a wandering mendicant, but thought he was a tree spirit. So she wanted to make offering to them, because in India, there's so many other beings in your way of seeing things, so many other beings besides human beings and animals. And so she brought back a bowl of rice, sweet rice, with a little bit of milk and sugar and some raisins. And I don't know if what she brought him was fancy done up like that, but brought him some rice, and he ate it, and he was surprised. It's like, oh, I have energy now, because his body had been so weak like that. Oh, I have energy now. And so he, thanked her and then went off again. And this time he wound up, he went and sat under a Bodhi tree. Okay. And again, he started meditating. And there were three times of the night, so to speak, where things happened. So as he was meditating, Mara, who you could see as some kind of spirit who was in one of the god realms, but Mara, he likes creating obstacles for other people. Yeah, have you ever met somebody who kind of likes creating problems for people? So, they get a rush out of it. So this is kind of the way Mara was. So, Siddhartha is meditating. And what does Mara do? He sends forth his army. Okay. So you have the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Force. They're all going there and harassing Siddhartha as he's meditating, and saying, come on, we're going to fight, and, you have suppressed anger, let your suppressed anger out, and we can fight it out, and you can solve it that way. And, and threatened him, brought out all their guns, forget swords, that's too simple, all this fancy guns, a few cannons, the A bomb, the H bomb, and blew all of this stuff up, as he was meditating. And Siddhartha, instead of, cowering in terror and running away and, calling the police to come and rescue him, he meditated on love and on kindness. Yeah. And, the energy of his love just made all these would-be enemies vanish. Yeah. Because if he didn't respond with anger, then how can they have a fight? Yeah. So they vanished. So that was the first part of the night. Then the second part of the night, Mara, again, decides now he sends all of his daughters. Okay, so you have You have the Miss Universe what is a conference gathering? You have, uh, I mean, all of Mara's daughters come and they're all wearing hardly anything. And, like the latest fashion, these, what do they, there's nude clothing now. No, really, as little as you can wear. And they have models modeling this. Yeah. And some women, for I don't know what reason, wear this. Anyway, so all these women are appearing like that before him, and trying to, seduce him. And he keeps meditating. And instead of, looking and going, whoa, let's get out, stop this meditation session and go chase somebody, he doesn't do that. He imagines what they're going to look like in a few years. They're going to be old hags. So they all transform into old hags. Yeah. So finally, we boomer women have a role. Uh, um, you know, and he keeps meditating because he transformed them all into hags. They all ran away. Yeah, can you imagine what would happen to, Beyonce and Rihanna and all these people if all of a sudden they turned into hags and all their fans stop being fans? Yeah, their lives would totally collapse. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the second uh, part of the night. And then the third part of the night, when dawn was coming, at that time he cleared, not only the anger from his mind that could have come out towards all the soldiers and so on, not only the craving and attachment in his mind that could have come out towards all the women, but, he kept meditating. He uh, abandoned also the ignorance that's the root of the whole thing, and attained full awakening at dawn. Okay, so that's what we hear about. That's the primary thing that we celebrate on Vesak Day. Okay, so afterwards he got up out of his meditation and he starts doing walking meditation. That was kind of the way the wandering ascetics got exercise, with that and going into towns for Pindapat. So he was walking and he was thinking, what I realized is something really profound, but who in this world is going to believe what I realized? Yeah, everybody's going to think if I start talking about it, they're going to send me to the nut house. They're not going to believe this. So I'm not going to teach. I'm not going to share. And at that point, Brahma, Indra, several other of the Hindu gods, appeared, and they knelt down and made offerings, and they requested him, please, to teach. Please teach that path to liberation, because there are a few beings who don't have the dust of ignorance in their eyes. There are a few people who can understand this. So don't just, because he was ready just to go off and forget everybody else. And the gods, Brahma and so forth, requested him, no, please stay, teach. Okay, so then he thought, well, who am I going to teach? Who's going to believe me? And he thought first of his 5 friends that he did the ascetic retreat with. So he saw, now he had psychic powers, he saw that they were at Deer Park in Benares. He was in Bodh Gaya. And, so he, Delta still had a messed up airline schedule, yeah, at that time. So he couldn't take the flight there. So he had to walk. Okay. If you've been to India, from Bodh Gaya to Benares is a nice walk. Yeah, of course, nowadays there's cars and trucks and you name whatever you can imagine on the road. At that time, it was probably just some paths, but he set off with the idea to teach his 5 former companions. So after some days, he arrives in Benares in the Deer Park, and he sees his friends. So he starts walking towards them. Well, his friends see him, and they go, "There's that sucker, that guy who was such a softy, who abandoned the practice and he went off and ate some food. He went to the steakhouse. He went to Haagen-Dazs. He's not a good meditator anymore. So we're not going to welcome him because in traditional, practice, somebody came, you would wash their feet, you would give them water, you would behave well and offer them something to eat, offer them a seat. They said, we're not going to talk. Just let him come. We're ignoring him. So the Buddha approached them. And as he was approaching, his vibe, so to speak, his radiance, which came from his mental state of realizations of the path, was so overpowering that his friends found themselves preparing a seat for him, preparing something to drink and so on. Yeah. And when he sat down, because they had said we're not going to talk to him, he's just a flake. When he sat down, they greeted him respectfully and they said, "Teach us what you've learned," because they saw that there had been some very powerful transformation to his dear friend. So he taught the 4 truths. Okay, these are often called the 4 noble truths. Noble being a translation of the word Arya. Okay, one translation of the word Arya. Or at least that's how somebody translated it into English. It could be superior or supreme, So, he taught the 4 truths, but calling them 4 noble truths in English is very confusing, because what's the first one? First of all, they say suffering, which is a bad translation, which I'll get to in a minute. But then you're told, oh, suffering is a noble truth. What is noble about suffering? Yeah. So you begin to see that translating in English the 4 noble truths is not a very good translation, because there's nothing noble about suffering, is there? There's nothing noble about ignorance, anger, and attachment, and jealousy, and arrogance, and so on. Yeah. So calling them noble is difficult. So I think a better translation is just to call them the 4 truths, because he stated 4 true facts, or just say the 4 truths of the Aryas. In other words, there are 4 things that are true that these people who, with exceptional wisdom, were able to realize as true. So the 4 things found as true by the Arya beings. Yeah. Okay. So what did they find? Well, first of all, suffering, which again, horrible translation. I why do I think it's a bad translation? Because if you ask Joe Blow on the street, when they're just coming out of Macy's, are you suffering? And they have a big package, they're gonna not say, "Oh, I'm suffering." Yeah. If you talk to some people at the beach, and they're lying there, either surfing or they're lying in the sand sunbathing. If you say, "Are you suffering?" Yeah, they're going to say no. Yeah. The Olympics are starting sometime soon. Yeah, all those athletes, when they're in the middle of doing what they're doing or preparing to do it, you know, and if they win a medal, are you and you ask them, "Are you suffering?" "No, I'm not suffering. I just got a gold." Yeah. Or I got 2 golds, or I got 5 golds. How many gold medals did he get? He got a whole lot. 14? Yeah. He did a real cash in, didn't he? But he was talented. He was a swimmer and he won all these things. Yeah. If you had asked him every time he was standing on the podium if he was suffering, he would have said no. So this is why saying the truth of, suffering is not good, because people can't relate to it. Hey, you know, if because then people say, "Oh, what the Buddha said is life is suffering," and it's like, well, that's not my experience. I'm young, I'm healthy. Yeah, I have some problems, but my life is not filled with suffering. And certainly I don't have problems every single moment. Yeah. So I prefer just to use the Sanskrit Pali word, dukkha, yeah, which means more unsatisfactory conditions. Yeah. If somebody asks you, "Is your life entirely satisfactory?" you would say no. Okay. So people can recognize, "Oh, my life is not 100% satisfactory, but am I suffering in great pain and fear and worry?" Well, no. Okay. So I keep the word dukkha. Yeah. So unsatisfactory conditions. So he taught that. And then he taught the cause. And lo and behold, what's the cause? We all think, what's the cause of our misery? Other people. Yeah. Why do you have problems? Well, your boyfriend, your girlfriend just broke up with you, and your colleague at work criticized you, and somebody spoke about you behind your back, so you didn't get the promotion that you wanted, and and the neighbor's dog bit you. Why am I suffering? What all these phony baloney people do. They're so inconsiderate. They just take advantage of me. I'm so sweet and innocent. I'm honest. I'm truthful. And they lie to me and they cheat me. And that's the cause of all my problem. Right? Yeah. And then your parents, oh my goodness. Ever since Freud, we blame everything on our poor parents. Why am I so screwed up? Well, because when I was in a crib and I was a baby, I cried, I was hungry, and my mother didn't come get me right away. So that's why, as an adult, I cannot connect with other people. We had a young adult group. Yeah, you were here for, yeah. I don't know if it was your group or not, but maybe, well, you can tell me. But people started in that group of young adults started talking about their trauma. And everybody's talking about trauma. And here's a nice group of, mostly middle class kids. And they're talking about trauma. And I said, because for me, I'm one of those boomer people. I'm a proud boomer. Um, the trauma is what the soldiers coming back from Vietnam experienced. Trauma was what people who were assaulted, and really attacked or raped, that's what they experienced. And here's this group of young people, they haven't even been alive that long, and they're always talking about trauma. Was this your group? Yeah, then they were all, And I said, who has trauma? And they all look at each other and say, well, we all do. And I'm like, excuse me, you didn't go to Iraq, you didn't go to Afghanistan in the army, you went to college, you got a job, of course things happen in families that aren't so great, but trauma. And they said, yeah, we all connect. We share our stories of trauma. And that's how we connect and make friends, because, we're transparent about our trauma. And I'm like, yeah. So back to the main point, we think, where does our unhappiness come from? Other people. Yeah, the people who put the IEDs that we stepped on the way to Walmart. We're constantly blaming somebody else. And we all know that the orange guy is the real source of our suffering. Okay, you all know who the orange guy is. You don't know? You're from what country? Australia. Okay. Well, think of somebody with orange hair. Yeah, you got it? Huh? Bluey. Oh, you call him Bluey? Okay. We have different names for him. They aren't so sweet like Bluey. Yeah, but it's always somebody else's fault, isn't it? Yeah, somebody lied to me. They promised me they would do something. They didn't do it. Yeah, they coughed on me. They coughed on me. I got cancer. I'm going to die. Well, you don't get cancer by somebody coughing on you, but that doesn't matter. I can still blame them for, everything that's wrong with me because they coughed on me. We're so outer focused. There's always something outside of us that's the problem. And when we see the world that way, then we have no power to deal with our situation. Because if everybody else is the source of either our happiness, because they love us and they praise us and they give us presents, or they're the cause of our misery because they disagree with us and they cheat us and they rob us, if it's always coming from outside, then there's no way for us to be happy, because we keep trying to arrange the whole world so that it is what we want it to be. So that all the nice people who like us and praise us and agree with our ideas and do what we ask them to do and never boss us around, that all those people are close to us. And all those other people, who say, you're 5 minutes late and go do this. There we've gotten rid of them all. And this is kind of how we live our lives, isn't it? How can I maneuver my way through the environment and arrange everything in my environment so that everything I like is nearby and everything I don't like is far away? And this is what we've been doing since beginningless time, not to mention since the beginning of this life. Yeah. And have we ever succeeded in surrounding ourselves by all good circumstances and wonderful people and perfect environments? Anybody succeeded? If you had succeeded, you wouldn't be here. You would be off enjoying your perfect luxury life. Yeah. So, constantly outer focused, thinking happiness and suffering come from outside, that view is a trap. Yeah. And this is one of the, when you take ordination, this is one of the really difficult things that you have to work with, because we are so habituated with thinking that happiness comes from outside and misery comes from outside, that we're always, trying to rearrange everything. Yeah. So you live in a monastery and you like some people and you can't stand other people. But you can't say that because you're a good Buddhist, and you have to take care of your reputation so that everybody thinks you're practicing well. So yes, everybody's in the field of my compassion, but I just don't talk to that person. Yeah. They sit next to me at the lunch table. I don't talk to them. I walk past them, in the corridor. I don't look at them. I don't say hello. Because I don't like them. Yeah. They are harming me. Why don't I like them? Well, they make a lot of noise. Yeah. They don't wear their robes very well. They're kind of messy. Oh, and the big one is they get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and wake me up. That is the sin of one of the greatest sins. I can hear them walking in the corridor, or it's my roommate. How dare they pee in the middle of the night and wake me up? Yeah. Oh, we have all sorts of wonderful reasons for why we can't stand people. Yeah, one of the big reasons around here is they're bossy, right? So either they're bossy or they're uncooperative. So it depends. If you're the boss, you don't like them because they're uncooperative. And if you're one of the uncooperative people, you don't like them because they're bossy. Okay. So, so my goal in life right now, I am impressed by the oppressed, not impressed, oppressed by the seniors who are bossing me around. But wait, with time, those seniors will die off, and I will be a senior, and then I can boss all those other children around, just like that person's bossing me around. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, welcome to monastic life. Yeah. Like all sorts of reasons we don't like them. They took too much at lunch, so there wasn't enough left for me because I was at the end of the line. Yeah. And they gobbled up all of the rice. Yeah, I don't have any rice. Or, oh, they put vinegar in the chocolate chip cookies. You know, there's some people around here who like to cook with vinegar. Yeah, that's how I feel too. No, you know, I'm talking to the person behind you. You like vinegar. Oh, well, poof. Don't you dare put it in the food when I'm around. Or if you put it in the food, you have to label it vinegar. Okay. So, um, so we're so concerned with the objects of eye, ear, nose, tongue, touch, yeah, and always trying to negotiate and arrange everything the way we want it. And we're never successful. Yeah. Why aren't we ever successful? Well, that's somebody else's fault too, because they should change. Yeah. I mean, I know what is best for them, and I can see the things that they need to work on in their Dharma practice, you know? And if they only listened to what I told them to do and stopped doing, then I would be happy. It would be good. Yeah. But I try and give these people my fantastic advice. Like, stop bossing me around, you joke. And they don't listen to me. Yeah. And I try and tell my parents as they get old, give me the car keys, don't drive anymore. Mom and Dad don't like that one. Okay. And you say to your cat, yeah, you aren't spending enough time on my lap. And you say to your dog, you know, you aren't jumping all over me and licking me with love when I want to be licked and going to sleep on the bed when I don't want to be. I don't want you to lick me. Yeah, it's always outside, isn't it? And we can never quite arrange the world the way we want. Yeah. So get used to it. Because this is why we practice. Yeah, because we've been doing this since beginning this time, and it hasn't worked as a technique to bring happiness. Yeah, and we just wind up more and more miserable, angrier, more craving, more attachment, more belligerence, more jealousy, more arrogance, and we're still not happy. So I just looked at the clock, and I didn't get through the whole life story, so I think maybe that's a good place to stop. You know, he taught the four. Well, we got through the first two of the four truths. Tomorrow we'll talk about the last two. But it's important to meditate on the first two, you know, because that's describing our situation. And until we can really be honest about our situation and seek out what causes it, you know, and then know that there's a remedy and a path to follow, until we understand all that, then we're not going to practice.
Thank you. I feel like a lot of times when I try to contemplate this, I feel like I sort of swing to the other extreme where I start kind of giving rise to self-hatred because I'm saying, why am I making myself suffer? Why am I not content with the way things are? You know, why am I doing this to myself? How exactly do you approach that?
Yeah, so putting ourselves down for putting ourselves down for not being a good practitioner, putting ourselves down for thinking in the wrong way. That's what you're talking about, yeah. That whole way of putting ourselves down, first of all, if you look at what we are saying to ourselves and ask ourselves if it's true, we'll find that what we're saying to ourselves is not true. I'm the source of all my problems. I'm such a bad person. Yeah, no wonder nobody loves me. Yeah, really? Nobody loves you? Really? I can't do anything right. I'm always rejected. Really? Come on, your dog loves you. Your cat loves you. Your pet frog loves you. Yeah? We all have friends. We have parents. Parents always love their kids, even if they may not speak to you for some years. They still love you. Yeah. So if we really look at what we tell ourselves about ourselves, it's not true at all. It's really exaggerated. Mm? So that's one thing. And another thing is, when we are that hypercritical of ourselves, who's the star of the show? Who are you thinking about? You're thinking about yourself, aren't you? Yeah. I'm so bad. Nobody loves me. I can't do anything right. I fail all the time. I'm a lousy practitioner. Nobody respects me. I try so hard, but nobody recognizes what I'm doing. On and on and on. Okay? Well, there are at least 8 billion human beings on this planet, and many more human beings in other realms. How many insects? Gazillions of insects. So there's so many living beings just on this one planet, not even including the rest of the universe. And who's the most important one that I'm thinking about all the time? Me. Yeah. That's a little bit skewed, don't you think? When we beat ourselves up like that, I'm the worst one around. It's so skewed. Yeah. We are not so important that we can make everything go wrong. Yeah. We are not so important that everything is our fault. Okay. So I know that can be a little disillusioning after a while. Oh, I thought I was more important than that. No. Yeah. So we have to really work with this. Yeah. My experience is this is one of the biggest hindrances to practice that Westerners have, is this thing of putting themselves down. Mm-hmm.
Hello. When I was at Vasa and Master Guogong taught about this exact fact to me and said it's a type of pride to think,
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good point.
Yeah. I am more important than everybody else. I mean, that's kind of arrogance, isn't it? I'm so powerful, I can make everything go wrong. Okay.